Hey there, everyone. Let me make sure my volume's working. Hello? Yep. Okay, good. So we're going to continue. Sorry I missed the holiday with everything going on, but I'm just going to take these off for a minute. I'm back to it. I should be doing it 2 times a week, and I think there's just a couple of you watching. Thanks for coming. We'll see if any more show up after that. Today, we're going to continue from our last live where we were working on the API. So I have a API here using minimal APIs in groups. And if you weren't here last time, I essentially took I mocked out the API using an HTTP file. And so we have different operations here, but we've only really implemented up to this post, and we're going to continue with the put. If this is your first time, let me go ahead and just explain what we're building. We're building a website for developers to read code they've never seen and try to explain what it does without actually being able to run it. This is an old technique from my musician days of sight reading, and I think it's a skill that can really help debugging most situations. I think it's a good skill to have, and so we're building a website that has some of those pieces that we're storing right now in the database. So we're just trying to get the API ready so we can get back to the View app and start to actually implement it. So if you can see here, we're saying host and code blocks 1. So let's go ahead and head over to our API. And you can see we have a couple of gets and then a get post. Let's go ahead and make one for map put. And this will extend our URI that we have here. And I'm going to put in that we need an ID for the one we want to update. And I'm going to call the method we're going to implement update. Now, if you've seen some of these others, this is, we're going to make sure that each one of these is a public static class, public static method, because when we write tests later, that's going to be the way we're going to be doing it. So static, and you can see from these others that I want it to be async, and this is going to return an I result. Now this had said HTTP context just because it didn't know what we actually wanted. What we actually do want, like we had down here, is we want both a context object so we can make the change to the database. We don't have a repository yet. We may or may not actually create one. I'm going to put a semicolon over there. And what I'm going to want to do is ask for our ID. Now this ID here is coming from the URL ID here, so it should be mapping that together. Let's get rid of that. And in this case, there's a few ways we can go ahead and do the update. Let me see. So the first thing we'll want to do is take a look at that model coming in, and we want to update that object. So first, let's get the old object from our context. Code blocks find async. And this way I can just give it the key value. So I'm going to say ID here. Let's put an async here. And this could return. Nope. I do this every time. Await here. And if old is null, then we can return results.notFound. No code block found, just so we can have some text. For the most part, this should rarely happen, but we want to make sure we're handling it just in case. And so what we want to do with the old and the new is really map it. So I could do the mapping of the individual items, but I'm actually, let me see if I brought it into my dependencies yet. Nope. So I'm going to use something called Mapster. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm using the console just because I find it easier than that slow project. Actually, let me see. Are we in the project? No. And you'll see me use N sometimes. I've aliased .NET to just N. And I want to add a package, and it is called Mapster. I happen to know that it's a short name. So you see over here in our packages we have Mapster now. Now Mapster does have some extensions to support it in our operation here, but what we're actually going to do is, one of the things that Mapster does is it adds, if we say old.adapt and give it our model, we're telling it to copy our model information into the old. So it's saying it can't find it. Let's go ahead and, using Mapster, and let's see if I got that right. They're the same type, so that should work. And this effectively, let me make sure of it once more. No questions in the chat yet, so if you see me looking over, it's because I'm just checking the chat on a old Surface I have. So I have this backwards. It should be model old. So we're going to take this data and map it here, and this won't return anything because it's changing it in place. You'll see some other places where people will use adapt to map it into a new object, and that's not what we're doing. And by making those changes, because we found it from the context, it's tracking those changes. And so we can now do if context.save changes async. Is greater than 0. Now I talked about this last time, but I'll just mention it here. Because this returns the number of rows affected, if it's 0, then we can assume something bad has happened. So I always like to have this changed, have this checked to make sure it actually affected something. Now this will give us a bad error if someone tries to update the same data without really making that change. So let's return results.ok, and I'm going to pass in the updated model, right? And I'm doing this and returning it mostly because something in the data store might have actually changed this. In our case it isn't, but I don't want to have a change in the database and suddenly we're not giving them the right data. So we're passing in the model and we're getting the entity back. Now we're not using actual models. These are all entities right now. We might do some more modeling later, but for now that should be good enough. So let's go ahead and run this. Oh no, because this not all code blocks. Return, so I'll do my little else. Return results problem. No changes detected, we'll say. So let's try to run it again. And so if we send our post in here of our new data, let's see if, make sure that still works, right? I'm just going to copy this into here, and I'm just going to make sure this ID is 3, just like we had here, and I'm going to say a simple block so that Let's actually look and make sure that it's in the database by doing a get. Looks great. And then down here, let's go ahead and do a put to just change that title. Everything else is going to be the same. It says a simple block now, and let's make sure that if we get it again, that it's actually in the data store. So good, we have put working. Lastly, unsurprisingly, is delete. And I might try to use something that's new here, but let's go back up here and do group.mapDelete. And this will have the same ID, but we don't need a model sent to it. Just the ID is good enough, and I'll just call this delete. Generate that method. And if I had good, if I had refactor or something installed here, I would go ahead and sort these in some way, but I'm not going to worry about that for this. Static async, and it'll just be a simple task. Actually, no, it'll be a task I result, because I need to send back if it's okay or not. And here we can pass in that context again and that ID. So first we want to make sure, normally I would go ahead and get the block like I'm doing down here, but I'm going to try something different, and that is code blocks execute delete. Is it execute delete, or is it just delete? Oh, there it is. Execute delete async. This is something new, I think, as of .NET 7, or it might be .NET 8, but it's pretty recent. And what this allows us to do is pass in some information, and in this case, this is all new to me, so I'm trying to understand. Delete the database rows for the entity instances which match the link query for the database. Interesting. Well, let's look at this. I'll go ahead and say, oh wait. There you get to see all the different apps I'm running. There it is. So if we look at this, let's look at execute update, execute delete. So we have this where we're going through and removing them. And now, oh, okay, I see. That's actually kind of clever. Here we can say where code block.id equals ID. Probably need a period there. And what does this return? Oh, returns in the same way, so we can say if execute delete is greater than 0, then we're going to assume it succeeded and say return results.ok, which is all we need. We don't need a message in there. Otherwise, we'll return results.problem. Could not delete code block, right? Let's go ahead and edit that code. Those pesky semicolons get me every time. Where else didn't I get a semicolon? The idea behind what we're doing here is hopefully you can see that the sort of machinations of coding are the same for me as they are for almost any other developer. And so I don't have any of this scripted with the hopes that you can see that, you know, I'm doing the same sort of work that you guys would do. I have some more experience maybe than some of you, but it's the same problem. I'm looking stuff up, I'm running it ad hoc, and let's try to run this again. So let's try to go ahead and delete. Well, let's make sure it's still here. So let's just get all the code blocks. So you can see we have 3 code blocks. Let's go ahead and try to delete this one. Okay, so it should have done it. And let's call that get again. And see, there's only 2 now. So we can see this whole round trip. Let's go ahead and send the request to create a new one. Send the request to make sure it's there, ID 4. Since the database is assigning those IDs, it's not trying to replace that ID with a sequential one. And let's go ahead and update that. That is interesting. Oh, that's why, because it wasn't different. Make sure that these match. Let's go ahead and do the put, and then we can go ahead and delete it as well. So it feels like we have the API sort of mocked up now. So where does that leave us? We've got our server code working in the way we'd like. And I'm not going to check it in quite yet. You will see that this project, let's see if it gives me the option to open it up in GitHub. If you want to see the progress, this will be under Sean Wildermuth and site read code. So all the code that I'm working on is in this public repository. So feel free to go take a look at it. You can see the comments of what we want to sort of accomplish. And let's start to look at the client side. Now in this case, I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio Code. And this is a pretty common way that I like to work, where I have Visual Studio Code on one side and Visual Studio for the back end on the other. And so this is running, so I can leave it run. And here I'll go ahead and run the dev. Excuse me. I'll run the dev tool so that both sides are running and are expecting changes, and I can go ahead and do the things I need to do. So we've got all that working. Let's make sure it's actually working by, is it 8,000 I changed it to? Let's find out. Let's go back to the server. And that's what I meant to do. 5211. Oh, that's address book. That's not right. Why is it the wrong project that's running? That's very strange. Someone says if there's an old instance. I have another project called Address Book that I use for a number of things, but I thought I had changed the port. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and let's make this 8,000. Just so we have a solid version we're going to test. Uh-oh. Nope. Let's come back over here and let's open up our browser. Nope. That is very strange. let's figure out why. So our index here, let's go back to Visual Studio Code. Oh, it's on a different port because somewhere I have a dead instance that it's looking for. So I must have an old view server running, which I could go hunt down. But for now, just so we can get past this, I'm just going to change this to before. Now, I'm doing it in this way where I have an HTML file in our backend project because I'm going to host the Vue project in the same server essentially. Later on, when we do builds, I'll go ahead and build the Vue app directly into our www root so that they can all be served without having to have something like Razor Pages. If I find the need to have something more dynamic, I could always bring in Razor Pages or MVC or one of those. That looks a lot better. Now we have our, let's get rid of that details undefined. That is a very strange thing that's happening. Okay. Of course, there's no router for that because yeah, something very odd is happening. I wonder if I can clear the cache. So I can't, your name is in Arabic, so I don't know what your name says, but the project is Vue plus ASP.NET. I won't be doing Blazor. Not a big fan of how it works, though I'm not really the, I'm not the right audience for it. But thanks for watching. That is very odd that some sort of cached version. That's what I was looking for, sorry. So if we look at apps, where is that? Attached elements. Well, let's do this instead. I'm not a big fan of needing to do this, but let's see. So I'm using the Doom pop-in here, and I'm just going to say clean kill I forget what I called it. Kill app node. Would be node. Trying to understand where this runner is going to. We're about halfway through. Let me make sure this isn't running something behind the scenes. That's all that. Task Runner Explorer. Okay, read code. Gotcha. Okay, I don't know what all that was about, but let's go ahead and continue and start to work on the actual code. To answer your question, when will I start to study Blazor? I won't. I'm not really the audience for it. I'm very comfortable in JavaScript, and I'm just not interested in learning that. There's plenty of people out there. If you're familiar with .NET Rocks, they talk about Blazor quite a bit, and I might want to go listen to that piece, but it's just not what I'm going to be focused on. Now that might not fit into what you want to hear, but that's where we're at. And it happened again. Nope. Let's try something. To make sure there isn't some thing in the background, I'm going to change this to launch the browser for us. Wow. That is so odd. I don't even know who is serving this. It's a browser link. That's this is a quandary, but this is good. I want you to see that when things go really crazy that it can be pretty common for this sort of thing to happen. So let's go to the old task manager, see who might be serving on that port. So there's all those nodes. Probably not the greatest idea, but let's go ahead and process name is exe. Okay. Let's go ahead and run our dev again. It's hard for me to know. I sell courses on Pluralsight, not sell, but you can get a subscription and watch my courses. But just search on YouTube. There's a lot of free courses here on YouTube for different things you want to learn. I'm not sure how I necessarily can help. Router. That's running, so let's try this one more time. We go home. Maybe we'll get lucky here. So let's start with this. We have this code view, and we have this fetch here. Of course, this doesn't necessarily work because our API over here that we designed should be running in the same. Oh no, that's fine. So we want random. This is actually the API we want. So if we change this to get random, this will return us a random piece of code. And let's see if this actually works. So if we look at network, let's see what happens. Random returned a random piece. And so if we keep on looking at this, that's strange that it's returning the same one each and every time, but we'll see. We should at least be able to see this code block we're seeing here. Let's see why it's not. So I'm getting, using fetch, getting the result back, and then setting that code value, and the code should just be here. Let's see why that isn't working. So pre is empty, so that's odd. If you haven't used the view tools before, we should be able to see here, just to make sure that we're not storing it someplace odd. So path, where's our code? Oh, there it is. Message and then undefined ref. Now we're doing this in TypeScript, I believe. Yeah. Is it TypeScript? Yeah. So let's do this. Let's tell us that we're going to be using TypeScript in here instead, which of course needs to be an S. And I also, this fetch doesn't do all the things I want to do. Zaki, the front end is Vue, not React or Angular, but Vue.js, which you can look at vuejs.io if you're not familiar with it. But it's a different front end. It's sort of the one of the top three front end frameworks. So I'm going to add, let me make sure I haven't added it already. Axios, nope. So let's go over here into our project, and I'm going to say npm install Axios. Because what I really want to do here instead is import Axios from Axios. The reason I like Axios in this case, do we have any models on this side yet? No, we don't. Is we should be able to say axios.get, and then we're going to put in a data type here. We'll put in the code block data type, which we don't have yet, right? And what this will return is actually the data itself. So we'll be able to look at this, and as long as the status is right, we'll be able to just say result.data here. And that data should be in code, so that's all good. Let's go ahead and create our code block. So if we come over here, whoops, to our code block, we can do this with models later, but for now I'm just going to do it here. And I'm going to copy our whole class, and I think it's an extension I've turned off, so let me just see this for a second. I was having a problem with Visual Studio being really slow, and I haven't figured out which of these tools is working. There's C#. Hopefully it doesn't require me to do anything else. So let's come back here and let's create a new file. I'll put it in models, code block.ts, and I should be able to nope. Interesting. This must be an old one that's not going to be able to take what else we have here. It's all those required it doesn't know what to do with. So we'll just make it easier. Well, I think we found our problem because I think it's wrong in the code. But that's why we want to use types here. And then we should be able to see if this will help us. Nope. Import type code block from models code block. Let's make sure it created in the right directory. Views, models are right there, and I don't know why it's complaining. Export interface. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. And we'll see now that it's complaining, now that we're using TypeScript, that this should be the code. Likely what caused all of this to be sort of a pain. So we've done everything right. Let's make sure there's no errors. We should be getting this, and every time we refresh it, it's only returning the first one. Not the best idea. So let's go to our server side and see why that is. The API is here. And the get random. Oh, no, that should be fine. Why is this always return? This was a little trick I learned a long time ago to try to put them in different order every time, but we're obviously not seeing that. Let's look at let's just confirm this, because there's only a few objects in here, but when we call random one, it's one every time. And if we look at all the code blocks, we can see there's only two. Let's go ahead and add our extra. Probably not the issue, but well, I'm not super happy with that. Let's figure out why this query isn't working. So that new GUID shouldn't work. Let's do a little investigation. Get random object link query. Yeah, so maybe I will use random. Let's try that trick. And here I'll say that of order by, which caused a lot of weirdness to happen. I'm going to say elements at, and then I need to supply random.next. Of course, the problem with that is zero and context.codeblocks.count. Super not efficient, but let's see if that actually fixes it. Now, of course, since that's getting the object, should just be able to do that. And let's see if this worked. We are getting random ones now. So with that changed, we should be able to see that we're going to get different ones. Of course, there's only a few, so we're going to get that repeating a lot. So we've got this very simple sort of data store working. Okay, so we can go back to view, and let's talk about what we actually need this to do. So we have some code in here that we're showing. We might want to style that a little bit, but we're not really ready for that. And we want to be able to get some feedback from the user. So I'm going to create let's do an H1 here and just say do an H3 instead. And I'm going to say describe what the code does. Now, we haven't really dealt with the whole logging in issue or anything, but I think we'll be good. And so here, let's put a code text area, rows equal, let's say 8, so they have some room. And let's go ahead and put a button here. At click, so when it's clicked, I want it to save answer. So we'll need a couple things here. We'll need a function save answer. We haven't done a lot with it yet. And we're going to need a we're going to have a simple object here. It would probably be more complex later, but actually let's make it a little bit more complex. Let's make this a reactive answer and rating we'll need to bring that in, import from view, and we already have Tailwind. Yeah, we already installed Tailwind, so above the text area, I'm going to put a div for rating the style as well. So let's say the model is going to be answer. I didn't put answer about answer. See answer, and let's call this response. Not in love with that name, but it should do for now. Answer dot response. And one of the tricks I sometimes do is I'll put in a little pre down here with the answer so we can actually see this change. Sometimes for debugging that could be helpful. So we can see that our response is empty right now. We have a rating defaulting to 5, and so as we start typing this, it should make the change. This does nothing. And again, we haven't really made this pretty at all, but we'll actually get to that next time. We'll get into all the Tailwind stuff. But I want to see if we can actually make sure that we're getting the right data. So what should we do? Now, over in our backend, that's where the code blocks. What are the other entities we have here? We have an answer that has all of these pieces of information. And notice here we have that user ID. And when we get later in this, there's reactions and red flag and an actual response to an answer so that people can sort of figure that out. That response is an answer text. I'm actually going to change this to be answer text, but camel case it because response is being used somewhere else. And so for now, because we don't have an API to save it, let's go ahead and just say alert answer dot answer text. Save the answer. We'll see that. Okay, we have stubbed that out for being able to save it, which I'm happy with so far. There's not a lot going on here, but I've made sure it was really ugly, if that helps. And so now that we have all that working, let's think where we want to go from here. We've got the API working. Oh, that's right. I'm going to go back over to our browser. And Tailwind CSS rating. I don't want the flow byte. I want the... Have we decided to use something? Let's see what our config is here. Yeah, we've been using that sane wind. I'm going to actually change this just a bit to not use my sane wind, but to actually use Daisy UI. So over here in Daisy UI, that's why I thought it was in there. Daisy UI is a project that gives you a bunch of these standard controls, and I like it. It's not tied to Vue. It can be used in Vue and other things. It's a plugin into Tailwind, so it really doesn't matter which framework you're using, as long as you're using Tailwind. So we look at our rating down here. That's what we're going to actually use. And we look at the HTML here. It's just whether the radio button is checked. Okay. Gotcha. So let's go ahead and add it to our project. Install. And then over here in Tailwind, we're going to change this required to be Daisy UI. So let's see what that's done to our project. Oh, that's not great, because I can't read anything. So, again, I keep on trying to talk myself out of doing much here. Let's go to the app view, and there's going to be a bunch of classes here that I'm going to get rid of a lot of the look, so that next time we can just do that. The layout's fine. I'm just going to take pretty much all the colors out for now. Okay, we can see this working, but I don't love the way it's working right now. So instead of my examples, let's go ahead and use some of these pieces. So here, the save answer should be a button. So that looks like a button. And we also want to, sorry if I'm a little scattered today, but I also want to look at the themes. Now, Daisy UI comes with a bunch of themes. I think I'm going to use luxury. I kind of like luxury. No, I don't like luxury. Business. I like business. And so the trick here is that we can go ahead and tell it which theme we want here. And it's not cupcake, it's going to be business. We can do that simply by, in our app view, it does not have to be at the top level, but we'll just say data theme equals business. And that hasn't really changed anything because I also need to tell it to include that. So we're looking here, I need to add this to the tailwind. So where are you, tailwind? Well, that looks more like what we thought. There's our code. Notice that some of the things are not working in the way we want, but let's go ahead and go back to our code view. This time I'm going to say class equals block. So instead of doing that, class equals flex, flex rows. Yeah, column. So we now have these things, though. We don't want them necessarily to be all under here, so I'm going to wrap my button for the div. Now we just have the button there. We have some spacing issues, but it's a good start. Probably a good start. So where are we on time? We've got about 5 minutes. So I'm pretty happy with where we're at. Got a lot of work still to do. Doing this just 2 hours a week means it's going to be a lot of code. But I'm going to go ahead and update these with January 4th updates. Go ahead and push that up. Not going to create a pull request because I'm doing everything in main. And let's go ahead and open this up in, oops. Open a browser. One of the questions I get quite a lot is, as I wrap up, is why am I using Edge? Well, you'll notice over here I am using Chrome as well. Chrome is my info browser, and Edge is where I do all of my development because I don't have any or many add-ins. This Vue DevTools is about the only thing I have installed here, so I can do the things I need. But you can always come here and a couple stars wouldn't hurt. But you can go ahead and look at all the source, download it to see where we're at, in case you're curious about where we are at any point. So feel free to use that to look at it. And if there's something weird or questions you want to do, please feel free to put in some issues. Don't put in pull requests, though, because I'm not going to be merging other people's changes. I'm just going to have my changes that are all set. Okay? Well, since we're at sort of a stopping point, I'm going to quit a little early, but thanks everyone for being here. I hope the small number of you that lasted this long got something out of it, and I will see you on Sunday at 4 p.m. So please let everyone know that we're doing this, and I'd love to have people view it. So I'll see you next time.